Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1987 animated film, The Chipmunk Adventure. Now, I'm not really the biggest fan of the Chipmunks, never really have been, but I thought this was okay. This is alright, at least for a one-time watch. It's not something I honestly would probably watch again anytime soon, but considering the fact that I'm not a big fan of the Chipmunks in general, the fact that it was tolerable and it wasn't an incredibly annoying experience, that's a positive. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the Chipmunk Adventure, I would like to give a special shout out to Ryan for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, The Chipmunk Adventure is directed by Janice Carman, who also does some voiceover work in this film, and she also is a co-writer of the script. And the direction, for the most part, it's adequate for what it is. It's not very dynamic or particularly sharp, though. I mean, there are a lot of just very standard, very typical camera angles and perspectives and types of shots for animation. Uh, this was her first directing effort, and you can kind of tell because there's a lot of ways that the camera is utilized that's very safe, very almost made for TV. Um, and the only other direction she did after this was episodes of another Alvin and the Chipmunks revival show in the 2000s, or was it the 2010s? So it's not like she really went on and do a whole lot after this. For a last minute replacement for the original director who dropped out, the end result is not too shabby, but it could have been better. Honestly, I kind of wonder how this film could have been if you had a more accomplished, a more skilled animated or animation director to be a part of this one instead of this first time director who was also the writer and also doing voiceover work. So she was spread pretty thin here. But the direction, it has its moments, like some of the dance numbers, some of the scenes that involve the chipmunks and the chipettes visiting different places across the globe. But it's definitely not what I would consider a film that features some really impressive, inspired direction. Now, the screenplay by Janice Carman and Ross Bagadsarian, it's in some ways better than it has any right being for a chipmunk movie, but in other ways, it's kind of lame and kind of lazy. For one, the way that the chipmunks and the chipettes first encounter each other in this, it just feels like something out of an episode of the cartoon series. It doesn't feel like something that you would see in a movie. So it's not really any different. And a lot of the way the plot unfolds and a lot of other elements of this just feel like stuff that you would see in the cartoon series. So it doesn't really have like a theatrical feel or size and scope to the story, despite the fact that they go to all these different locations across the world. It also doesn't help that it's very fractured in terms of the way that it's presented. There's just a lot of segments that are just focused primarily on the chipmunks or primarily on the chipettes. And there's really not that many scenes throughout the movie, other than a little bit near the end and at the start, where they are together. So you just have a lot of them doing their own thing. And in some instances, the chipettes actually wind up doing more or seem to have more to do or more screen time than the chipmunks. So if you're a chipmunk fan, you kind of feel a bit cheated with this film because you just mostly get Chipettes stuff, and the Chipettes get like the coolest scenes for the most part, the most memorable moments. They get the most thrilling sequences, and the Chipmunks get stuff that's all right, like the woolly bully thing with the natives, and a few other scenes. But there's even large chunks of the film at points where the Chipmunks are just captured by the natives and aren't really doing anything, and you just focus primarily and solely on the Chipettes and them trying to return this baby penguin to Antarctica, which that whole subplot sucked. I didn't care for that at all. It was just so painfully on the nose, saccharine, sugary sweet. It made me gag. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of ways that things are set up with this script that are kind of underwhelming. The fact that it's like really intended for very young audiences also limits what the script can do story wise with its comedy and with other aspects of the plot. So the villains never really come across as intimidating as they honestly should be. Although they definitely do try, especially with the design of the villains and the way that they're animated, but their actions really aren't that uh, um, daring or dastardly or memorable. And when it comes to their villainy, the the whole setup of the chipmunks and the chipettes racing against each other, it ultimately doesn't lead to anything because they don't actually finish the race, because they just ultimately agree that what they're doing is wrong because they got tricked by the villains to basically be mules. And so now they're like, oh, we don't care about that. We're going to stop the race and uh, go and rescue this penguin and deliver it back to its parents in Antarctica. And the the chipmunks, they're captured by the natives, and so the Chipettes have to get involved with that. And so the race angle is dropped at a certain point in the story. The way that the villains are captured in the end is not very satisfying because it doesn't really involve the chipmunks and the chipettes that much. They're just captured, and then all of a sudden their babysitter shows up and essentially causes the villain's car to crash. So it's like, okay, they weren't really the ones that stopped them. Like, they're established as these bad guys who have been manipulating and using the chipmunks and the chipettes, and they're not even really the ones that stopped them in the end. So that's not really that cool or that satisfying. The stuff with Dave, he's a total dope as usual. He gets tricked into saying certain phrases so the chipmunks can splice those together so they can trick their babysitter so that they can go on this adventure. And you would think, okay, they had to go to those lengths in order to get out of the house. But the Chipettes, I guess, can just do whatever they want because they're already there at the bad guy's mansion. So you're like, okay, so you could have done something where they have to come up with something clever in order to get away from their parents, if they have parents, but that doesn't happen. And then once they start the whole race, like, yeah, they go to Egypt, they go to Paris, they go to Cairo, they go to India, they go to a few places, and you get some montages. And I think they even go to Greece at one point, but it definitely does feel limited in terms of the places that they go to, which I guess originally in the first draft of the script, they went to more places, but the film took way too long in pre production. So they had to ultimately cut a lot of those stops out of the script. And so they're just limited in terms of the types of places they go to. And like I said, the race doesn't really seem like it leads to anything because they just drop it at one point. The stuff involving the diamonds and the bad guys that are trying to get the diamonds from the Chipettes or the Chipmunks. The bad guys are such bumbling fools and get defeated and get outthwarted so easily that it doesn't really seem like those scenes add a ton, and they become pretty predictable after a certain point. But some of those scenes are kind of exciting, as you know, a rated G movie can get. I mean, the whole scene with the Chipettes when they're underwater and they get chased by this bad guy and the shark. I would say that was effectively exciting for this kind of movie. And there's other moments too involving like the chipmunks in Mexico, and of course there's a lot of stuff involving the characters. It's very standard for their overall characters in terms of their personalities and their shtick. Like Theodore is fat, so he wants to eat everything. He wants to always eat all the time, and so that's a repeated gag. Like, ha ha ha! Oh, he wants to eat all the couscous and he wants to eat all the Mexican food. Oh, but there's no Mexican food. Ha ha ha! I would say the chipmunks are more developed here in terms of their personalities than the chipettes. The chipettes just kind of blend together in terms of their overall personality, so it's kind of hard to differentiate them despite their different appearance in terms of the various chipettes. And like I said, Dave doesn't really do a whole lot in the plot. It's just kind of there. The villains are just kind of there as well. Um but what makes the movie still sort of okay is because of the fact that there's some good setups in terms of the different places that they go to. There's some fun scenes that really do provide some nice backdrops or nice settings for the musical numbers. So, in a lot of ways, it is a musical. So the strength of the film, in a lot of ways, is the music, and that's the way it is for a lot of chipmunk films or just chipmunk stories in general with these characters. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, it's kind of an extended glorified music video, but it works when it's doing that sort of stuff. And I think it's at its best when you have scenes featuring the Chipettes and the Chipmunks together. When it's just splitting them up and it's focusing on either one, it's not as entertaining, if you ask me. So yeah, this script, it's not the best thing, but it also could have been a lot worse. It really could have been. Um, the voiceover work, I mean, for the kind of film that it is, it's fine. You know, the voiceover work by Ross Bagadsarian Jr., who voices Alvin, Simon, and David, or Janice Carman, who does Theodore, Brittany, Jeanette, and Eleanor, or Dody Goodman as Miss Miller, Susan Tyrrell as Claudia Furstein. She had a lot of fun playing the villainess. Anthony D. Longis, Blade from Masters of the Universe as Klaus. Frank Welker, who voiced Sophie, the baby penguin, native chief. Definitely not some of his best work, but it's fine for what it is. Ken Sansom as Inspector Jamal is also pretty decent. So is Nancy Cartwright as the Arabian Prince. So I mean, the voiceover work for a kids movie, it's pretty much up to par from what you've seen in other cartoon movies from this time, and other voiceover work that you saw from the Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon series during the 80s. And the other aspects of the film are also decent enough, like the editing by Tony Mizgalski, and the music by Randy Edelman. Like I don't think it's just decent. I think he did a great job actually. I really like the score, especially the opening credits theme. It's actually pretty catchy. It's epic, and it's better than the majority of the movie itself. I actually really like it. Randy Edelman to me is just a very underrated composer anyway. So it was nice to hear his work in this. And I also like the a lot of the songs. A lot of the original songs for the soundtrack I actually really enjoyed. I like Diamond Dolls. I liked the Girls of Rock and Roll. I liked Off to See the World. There are other ones I'm not really big on, like the Woolly Bully cover, because I'm so tired of that song. Heard that so many times in a bunch of family movies over the years. Uh, the I, like that one was eh. My Mother, I didn't like at all. That was so lazy and sappy and just dull overall. It sounded like it was something you would hear in a commercial. But there were other songs though that I did enjoy. And honestly, they were good enough. I kind of want to hear them sung by artists that aren't doing chipmunk voices because they're actually that well composed and overall put together. So it's like I said, it's very much a musical, so a lot of the film's appeal is the musical numbers, and those are definitely some of the more entertaining, enjoyable sequences in the overall film. If you can deal with the chipmunks and the whole chipmunk thing, which I don't blame people if it's a little too much for them when it comes to the chipmunk voices. And I think the quality of the animation for what it is, there's a couple, not just a couple, like there's a handful of scenes where it looks like something from the Saturday morning cartoon series, but then there's other sequences that actually look like they have a budget behind them. And it really does help that a lot of the animators who used to work for Disney went on the Black Cauldron, they wound up working on this. So you have some really talented, really skilled animators that were working on it. And it really does show when it comes to the quality of the animation in more than one sequence. So, yeah, this is a film that I would probably say is not like I don't personally think it's a gem. I think the 7.2 rating on IMDb is way too high. I mean, it gets a higher rating than All Dogs Go to Heaven, which I do not understand at all, as well as some other animated films that I think are significantly better than this. But for a film that was clearly made to just be a cash grab and didn't have a ton of effort when it comes to the script because it's a kids movie and we don't really have to put that much effort into things. It's surprisingly endearing and charming enough for what it is. It's not gonna win any awards. It's not, in my opinion, a classic of its genre. But you can do a hell of a lot worse than the Chipmunk Adventure when it comes to 80s animated films based on Saturday morning cartoons. Like, I would absolutely take this over any of the Care Bears movies, for instance. But that's just my thoughts on the Chipmunk Adventure. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.